Here's a nice shot of the Missouri River real quick, halfway between Independence and Liberty, Missouri. Today we're gonna check out Excelsior Springs and just see what's going on there. We'll probably check out Hall of Waters, Elms. Just checking out buildings in Excelsior Springs today, walking around. It's a pretty gorgeous day today, so it should be fun. Excelsior Springs has a lot of history. When you roll into town, you can see a little bit of it in these old houses here from the early 1900s. Excelsior Springs pretty much began in the 1880s and grew from there. It became famous because people who were traveling through or owned land found that the springs and water would start healing their ailments. And it turns out the water held a lot of minerals that helped them with whatever ailed them. So it became almost like a mecca for healing, a destination where people would go to get better. It really boomed from 1880s through the 1890s, early 1900s, all the way up until the 1960s, when people started questioning healing waters. This is the Hall of Waters in Excelsior Springs, Missouri. It is the current city hall of Excelsior Springs, and it still is an open public building. So everybody's going here for their city business. It was built in 1937, finished in 1937 by architects Keene and Simpson of Kansas City. Complete Art Deco. Art Deco light fixtures are so interesting. This whole building has a Mayan Art Deco motif, and you can see it reflected in just about every aspect of this building. All of these symbols and decorative patterns. This is the north side of the building. It looks like it's got somewhere and they've got it chained off. I think those copper motifs turned teal, a nice teal patina as they aged. Here you can see some of the decorative Mayan water god designs in this building. They spared no expense with this. This was a works progress administration building. So they were employing a lot of talented workers who put their all into the designs of this building and executing those designs from this talented architecture firm. Here are the seals for the city of Excelsior Springs Hall of Waters when the building was erected, and this is the grand hall with the water bar. People started coming to this building in the late 30s through the 40s and 50s to get treatment for their ailments through the waters and the minerals that the waters contained. Gorgeous shot, the tall, tall ceilings. The water bar is virtually untouched since it was built. It still retains a lot of the original design. This building is on the National Register of Historic Places. It was put there in 1993. The light fixtures in this room were revised and refinished to be historically accurate, and they were completely restored, I guess you could say. As of the past few years, more work has been put into this building to preserve it. It's an ongoing issue. It had been kind of left to deteriorate for many decades after the water craze ended for Excelsior Springs in the 60s. So it really lacked funding and it suffered big time. I don't know how much of the city leadership was involved in those decisions, but anyway, you know, part of that works to preserve buildings too. When they're not getting the proper care they need and they're just left, at least you have a good look at what the original situation was. It's completely original, for better or for worse, I should say. This was a fountain at the end of the bar. It's beautiful, even though it shows a little bit of wear. This room's ambience is incredible. They had a terrible radio station playing in the background while I'm filming this, so I apologize for that. But the room, the visuals of this room are just incredible. It looks like it was might have been recently repainted, and you see like 4 or 5 different shades of golden yellow going on there on the ceiling, which is fantastic to reflect on the nice Art Deco orientation there. You see their soda, iron, manganese, and calcium waters available at that bar. There's a nice shot of the ceiling again. This is 2 stories up in this portion of the building. Hot and cold saline water. It's so wonderful how untouched this interior is in this building. You know, again, for better or for worse. Again, you see the Mayan motifs in the tile of this building, straight out of the 1930s. Beautiful light fixtures. This whole room faces south, so it lets in a lot of sunlight, a lot of natural light there. This building had bathhouses in it, one for females and one for males, and it had 2 pools as well, all for therapeutic uses. You can still go downstairs using the stairs or the elevator today, and you can check out the pool in the basement of this building. You can look at it from afar. It's all closed off to the public, but you can see it. If you ever visit this building, you can pay attention to a lot of the small details in the architecture here. It's incredible. I've been to this building many times, and it seems like every time I go, I catch something different. It's a beautiful Art Deco, example of Art Deco design and architecture from the era. The skylight in the main hall, the HVAC system, and the tile, the terrazzo flooring, the coloring, the proportions, and the windows of view. What's great about this building is if you go upstairs to the 2nd floor, you can walk around and get a great view over the water bar. The waters of Excelsior Springs won awards at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. The Regent Spring Iron Manganese Water and the Solarian Ginger Ale, gold medals. There are 10 varieties of water. Calcium bicarbonate, lithia, sodium bicarbonate soda, saline and sulfur waters, or sulfosaline waters. And people came from all over. The water was bottled and pumped, and they routed the waters into this building to be made available at the water bar. There was one spring that flowed below this building, but they routed the others via wooden pipes. So this is the basement, ground floor of the building, G and the elevator button. Obviously that pool weighs a lot, so they stuck it on the ground floor, and there you have it. That's the original pool that folks could come to and swim in, or get exercise in if they had a disability. Parts of this building have been altered over the years. That drop ceiling, for instance, and some HVAC vents and things like that were included, but clearly a lot of it is very original and still intact. You can tell where they poured the concrete and what kind of formwork they used. You can also see the deterioration that the water caused in this building. It's also flooded several times before they built a berm out back. Naturally, because obviously there was springs all over the place. Usually this building is pretty quiet. You can walk around in the areas of this building that are open. This is above the ground floor. You can go to the second floor of the pool area and peek out a door and look through there. You see the columns that support the building covered in that original tile. Portions of the original ceiling. Heading back upstairs again, you can check out a portion of one of the original treatment areas. It's on the east side of the building on the main floor. It's like a mini museum area. Again, this building is still the public city hall, and it's still used for business. I think they have court functions in this building as well. I'm not sure now. But the public come in here and be tourists and look at the visitor features of the building. So this was the women's area where people would go for treatment. They would have steam operations, bathing operations, shower operations. You see the original radiators. It's a rare thing to see a building so original. And I see they've replaced the light fixtures with LEDs. They have been doing a little bit of work, so they must be securing. You can see plaques in the building that commemorate that it was a WPA project. This is the west side of the building. I see they've covered up some of the original glass and these exterior light fixtures to help protect it, which is a good sign. This is some beautiful colored glass they have there. Here's some exterior shots of the building. Again, you can see how ornate it is and how much work was put into it. Some neat landscaping as well. The two main entrances are on the north and the west of the building. They're sort of identical. And there you can see the plaques that denote that it's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's a historic landmark in Clay County, Missouri. It cost $1 million in the mid and 30s to build this building. So that was, they spared no expense. While you're here, you can walk around to the back of the building and check out some of the beautiful stonework as well as you look at the exterior. Again, everything's original, so just be careful not to trip. The tile work on the building's interior and exterior is just incredible. Hey. It's a beautiful day. Sun's shining. A few clouds in the sky. Makes for some great shots of this building. Flags blowing. Couldn't ask for better weather in October. Here's some shots from behind the berm as we part ways. There's the south side of the building. This is an old tree. Way old. Oh yeah. One of the magical springs. So right now in Excelsior Springs you cannot access the waters. They're capped off. Around town are various pagodas. There's the Crystal Springs Pagoda out there. Little gazebo type buildings where these springs were originally, they originally had wells, and the wells are capped right now. Do walking around downtown a little bit here so you can see the original downtown buildings. It's a pretty quiet place. Totally like stepping back in time. There's not many people here. It's a bedroom community. It's about a half hour outside of Kansas City. The Elms, the presence of the hotel, the Elms, does kind of make it sort of a resort town, but there's not too many things to do here. There's some nice little shops, but sometimes they're closed. You have to make sure that you're coming at the right hours. There are some nice restaurants too. Again, you just have to come at the right times. Ray's Diner was established here in the 30s, or the early 40s, established 1932. It moved to its current location in the 40s. It's been here ever since. We missed its date because I think they close at 2 o'clock. So I was looking at the Hall of Waters for too long, so we weren't able to check out Ray's Diner, but there it is. Nice little dive. It's pretty tasty. It's so peaceful here. It's nice to just walk around. Some shops are open. There's a museum down here and an old bank on the corner. I don't think we're gonna go today. Some of these storefronts are original, which is just really fantastic to look at. Straight out of the 1890s. Here is one of those little capped spring pagodas. The original stone pagoda here. People would come here to get water, certain type of water anyway. I forget which one this was. I'm not sure what this old stone wall was. It almost looks like it was part of a building. Walking around town, it's just wonderful to see the original brick buildings and some of the original painted signs. And here are some old houses from the 1890s. So many people have flocked to this area that they had to have a lot of boarding houses. So a lot of like apartments and boarding houses make up the downtown. This church has been converted into a theater. And recently, people in Excelsior Springs have painted really beautiful murals on some of the buildings. So that's really livened up the space. It's really nice. Kind of highlights the history of the area and all these wonderful original buildings. Here are some of the boarding houses in the boarding house district. They're still there and people still live in them. Some of them are being restored. It's just a great example of architecture from the 1890s and the early 1900s. It's hard to find now this kind of architecture that's as unaltered as it is. Boarding house district buildings. Straight out of the 30s, huh? It's like a movie set. Al Capone did come here. There was 30s gangster activity here in this town. Al Capone, I hear he liked to stay at the Elms, and he liked to stay in certain rooms where he would get a good view of who was pulling up to the hotel. That stone gazebo that I looked at was the sulfo salt well. There are walking trails in Excelsior Springs. You just need to know where to find them. Here we are at the Elms. The Elms burned down twice in its history. And the latest version of the Elms was rebuilt in 1912. It's a functioning hotel, and you can stay here today. It's very nice. It too is on the National Register of Historic Places. President Truman had stayed here the night that he found out he was re-elected president, when he held up the famous newspaper that said Dewey defeats Truman. He held that newspaper up in the St. Louis area, but the night before he was staying here. So they awoke him here at this hotel, and he got on a train and he was out at St. Louis, and they told him that he had won. So he was actually here when he did get awarded the presidency. When you visit the Elms today, you can see how it's been a little bit modified. They've built onto the front of the building a little bit in this entryway, but the tile floor is original. You can see everything with the stone used to be the exterior, and everything with the interior has plaster walls or wooden motifs or brick. More modern area of the hotel, and then the pool in back. Mixture of old and new here. But some of the glass is original. It's got some ripples in it. You can see the great exterior views of this building where it was original. Some of these curved walls have an Art Deco look to them, and there's definitely a craftsman vibe to the decor of the interior of the Elms. Definitely reflecting the 1912 or the 19 teens time period in design of interiors. They have modern light fixtures now, which is a nice touch. Old and new. Nice marble staircase. So while you're in Excelsior Springs, head down the street from the Elms. Just to the north is Wabash Barbecue. You can walk by some neat buildings on the way. There's an old house. And there's also like an old building that looked like a stable, some kind of like garage of some sort, a stone carriage house of some sort maybe. It's got beautiful brick arches, or stone arches rather. So Wabash Barbecue, this building was the train depot, train station for the Wabash Railroad. It was built in the 20s in the Mission style. They serve some fantastic barbecue, so we're going to grab a bite. Look for the Wabash Railroad, obviously. This is where the train used to run, right along this street. Lots and lots of history. Can't go inside right now because of COVID. But the exterior is neat nonetheless. Wabash Barbecue. This is the, what is this? Nachos? Barbecue nachos. It's burnt in. Sorry. That was really good. Very delicious. People flocked to this town by the thousands back in the day, and then it all just kind of ended in the 60s as people started researching more, and it became almost like a pseudoscience thing to some people, so the popularity really died. Overall, Excelsior Springs is a really neat little town with tons of history. It's a beautiful location, and you could spend a lot of time reading about the history of the town. So hopefully they get some kind of money pumped in and upkeep their buildings. That's what needs to happen. They've already lost a lot of buildings. Anyway, thanks for joining me.